A pregame before tonight's game. Let's look at all of the favorable matchups and predictions. And will this be Houston's first step to fulfilling the prophecy?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for Texan fans all around. Today's show, I'm going to dive into my final predictions for tonight's game. I know this is a late show, has some internet issues, but today's show is for you guys. And listen, with my final predictions, we got to kind of dive into nothing the Pittsburgh Steelers present Houston hadn't seen this year. Like, they saw the cold weather, they've seen the blisses, they've seen it all, and in a large part during the win streak, they've been able to beat it all, overcome it all. So we'll dive into that. Just also a misconception about the quick game. Many people believe if Aaron Rodgers and the offense quick game Houston to death, that's their best route to win this game. And I disagree with that. I'm opening up today's show looking at all of the favorable matchups for the Houston Texans. And it leads off with feed Nico Collins. I mean, he's a guy that can get this offense going early and often. And I want to put an emphasis on often. We know he'll get started early, but sometimes this Houston's offense will dial it back on Nico. And this is one of those moments, best on best. You got to get your guy involved. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode like the Houston Texans. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The matchup that I'm looking directly at, and I'm going to kick it off right off with it, guys. Nico Collins versus Joey Porter. That is the matchup for Houston, and I think that's a matchup for Houston that should favor Houston and could propel Houston to a win. Before I dive into my thoughts and opinions on that, shout out to my everydayers for the Himalayas, making the Locked On Texans podcast your first listen of the day, and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in the land. I think we're going to see that matchup a lot, guys. Joey Porter versus Nico Collins. The Pittsburgh Steelers ranked in the top 5 in man coverage in the NFL this season. Nico Collins has done a very good job cooking man coverage this year with a 22.5% first read rate. I mean, that's amazing. When they recognize this one-on-one, CJ Stroud understands that Collins needs to get the ball, and he does at a high rate, right? So that plays in the favor of the Houston Texans. And this is one of those games where, like I mentioned, in order for Houston to win, everybody got to be on their P's and Q's. They got to execute, right? But it has to be the best versus the best. And each side will look at their best players to prevail in a victory. Even with a consecutive 1,000 receiving seasons, it still feels like Nico Collins is one of the more underrated, if not the most underrated star receiver in the NFL, and sometimes forgotten in terms of targets here in Houston. Plus, he's Houston's biggest playmaker. We look at he averages, 15 yards per catch, maybe a little bit over that. So when Houston needs to make a play downfield, we'll dive a little bit into the Steelers defense and how they'll give you plays downfield. Nico Collins is the guy. This should be one of those games where Nico is a top priority, and I mean that from all standpoints. Depending on the coverage and the pre-snap look, decoy Collins to open up other opportunities for other players. We need to see that. We've seen that before. I think in the Jaden Higgins touchdown, that was also a little bit of busted coverage, but you look at how Nico Collins was used underneath, being that number one guy, he's going to attract that attention. Other guys got to step up. So for Jaden Higgins, right? For Jalen Noel, if he gets some playing time. For Dalton Schultz, who I don't want to necessarily put him in that step-up category, but a guy that needs to consistently be who he's been for Houston. Xavier Hutchinson, who I think needs to be a critical part of this game plan. Some of these other guys have to step up. And when decoy Collins plays a role in attracting attention from opposing defenses, that's where you're seeing easy one-on-one looks, right? And so we've seen it before. I think we need to continue to see it in this game, especially in obvious moments. Even in moments where it feels like maybe he needs to be force-fed, don't be scared to do it. He's your number one receiver. Like when we look at other number one receivers in the NFL, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, some of those other brothers, they make sure, those offenses make sure that they are involved in the offensive game plan. He is the ultimate offense sparker, and allow him to be that tonight. Nick Caley, the red zone matchup versus the Steelers. That's another matchup that it kind of favors Pittsburgh in the grand scheme of things, right? Caley recently gave a lot of praise to the all-pro snub kicker, Caley Fairbairn. But he also said he would prefer to score touchdowns every time they get down in that red zone. We know Fairbairn has been the red zone weapon. And that's somewhat sad to say, which is a large part why he leads the league in field goals made this year. But Nick Caley is absolutely right. We know this is the ultimate struggle for the Texans, and the Steelers excel with their red zone defense from an eye test and a number test as well. The numbers back it up. Shout out to Clayton Anderson, who covers the Houston Texans for Texans Roundtable, who wrote an amazing article on the game about hanging in the balance, the game hanging in the balance, red zone production. He's absolutely right. The last 5 weeks of football for Houston, they've improved, minor or major, however you want to look at it. And depending on which lens you want to look at it, they've gone 8 of 15 in the red zone. That's an improvement. The Steelers have issues with stopping yardage, especially in the passing game. This is one of the worst defenses in the NFL, from a yard standpoint, but they are a very bend, don't break defense. They have a very good red zone defense. So for Houston, the crucial matchup that'll set them up for victory is simply Texans offensive coordinator Nick Caley versus the Steelers defensive coordinator, Coach Austin. Execution from the offensive line. You cannot get pushed back into the backfield when trying to establish the run. And I don't necessarily want to say establish the run, just be consistent with the run. Right. And so, hey, I also want to add this. Don't contain CJ from a conservative standpoint. Teams add new wrinkles in their game plan when it comes to the playoffs. We understand that. But who a team is typically who they are. And I mentioned the Steelers run a lot of man coverage. CJ Stroud versus man in 2025, 116 passer rating, 7.1 yards per attempt, 14 TDs with a positive plus 0.18 EPA. The opportunities will be there for Stroud. And throughout the game, Stroud, for him to do what he does best, he has to make sure that obviously he's converting, but I don't want to see him restricted from a play caller standpoint. If he throws an interception, if he has a turnover, the following drive, we should not see a conservative drive. Obviously, you want to go out there and protect the ball, right? But allow for him to dictate the game from a quarterback standpoint. And for Houston to win this game, they'll have to jump out to an early lead, in my opinion. And again, establish the tempo by riding CJ Stroud. That doesn't mean neglect the run game. That doesn't mean, avoid running in certain situations. Still run. When Houston runs the ball well, they score points. When they don't, then they don't score points. But Stroud has to be masterful in between 25 and 25. That's a 25-yard line from the return and a 25-yard line going into the red zone. I think that's where you want to see, and that's where we expect for CJ Stroud to be the best version of himself. Now, Caley has to be masterful in the red zone. All parties have to execute for Houston to get a win tonight, which is what I think that they'll do. But when we return back, we got to continue looking at some of these favorable matchups and the misconception about the quick game. People think, hey, if Pittsburgh just neutralize the Neil and Will, they'll be able to. That's not the case, guys, and the numbers back it up along with the eye test. We got more Locked On Texas talk when we return. Before diving into that conversation, which will be fun, might I add, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action every night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. So no draft, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. It's made watching games even more engaging and exciting, especially when you follow individual player performances. I personally love the flexibility with options like flex play, where you can still get paid even if one pick misses. I mean, you can't beat that in 2026. Download the Prospect app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prospects, it is good to be right. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell y'all something else. Here's another secret. Robinhood is where it's at right now. What if sports were traded like markets? Now, you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can too. I always knew the game, but I never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge until now. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator, play-by-play. You decide. You're in the game now, guys. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app to begin. Let's continue with this pregame edition of the Locked On Texans podcast. You know what the prophecy is that Houston can fulfill? Okay, this season, let's look at what Houston has done this year. You beat Baltimore. You beat Kansas City. You remind two other teams that no matter how good y'all have gotten or better y'all have gotten in Buffalo and LA, you still have an issue with us, right? Something else, there's another team I can't wait to dive into that I'll discuss once Houston gets past Pittsburgh. I'm not going to say if, once they do. But I'm also going to add to that by saying, hey, Houston wins tonight. They exercise their wild card on the road, not wild card, but just on the road demons. They have yet to win the game on the road in the playoffs. That's the prophecy for Houston. And we heard how C.J. Stroud has talked about his Lord and Savior, Nico Collins as well, their faith. This could be one of those years where all you have to do is believe. Now, side note, the Steelers have suffered from busted coverages at points throughout the season. If those issues arise against Houston, Stroud has to be on point with his delivery. Let's get that ball out with room to run. This could very well be a legacy game for C.J. Stroud, guys. Could very well be one of those moments where for 17 games and for C.J. Stroud, or say 14 because of the concussions, where we were up and down and saying, hey, he doesn't look like his rookie form. Was his rookie year just an anomaly? He's had moments, but not a full. He could very well walk out of this game with a guess who's Bizak, still smell the dome of clothes like Krispy Kreme. I was cooking them, no. I'm talking about the Steelers, the defense he can cook. Now, I'm not saying Houston absolutely needs for him to like play that Superman role to win, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see a 260-yard, 3 TD game from C.J. Stroud tonight. I wouldn't be shocked. Would not be shocked. And I don't want the offense to be scared to push the ball downfield. I'm not saying live like that, right? Obviously be smart about it. But Coach Ryans has said C.J. Stroud has been locked in. And I would be a fool if I don't think to myself and tell you guys, hey, C.J. Stroud also knows, hey, Nick, on some of these coverages, the miscommunication on the back end of their defense, consistently, they confuse themselves. So how about we add some extra confusion in there and open up some big plays? I think C.J. Stroud, I think highly of him, and his relationship with Nick Caley has grown so much. I think recently was a Nick Caley who was talking about C.J. Stroud. They were going over film and putting in plays, and he was talking about, hey, it was C.J. that said, instead of this route, let's do this route on this against this coverage for this play. So they know that the Steelers have a lot of busted coverages. I assume that the Houston Texans once a quarter will attack some of that confused secondary, some of the confusion, in the secondary that the Steelers present and the issues that they cause themselves. And most people are talking about, you got to attack Houston's defense. When we look at the Texans defense, attack the defense in the quick game. The Steelers live on YAC yards, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they do. Their receivers, especially in one-on-one man coverage, not named DK, and DK isn't the greatest, but their receivers have an extremely hard time getting open, creating separation, right? And an extension of that problem has led to Kenneth Gainwell, Pat Fairmouth, those guys having a major role in this passing game offense. So the Steelers live on YAC yards. The Houston Texans take YAC yards away. Like, this isn't a team that allow a lot of YAC yards. And Houston DBs has a lot to do with that, especially underneath when you look at how great Kamari has played this year, Jalen Petrie, an all-pro snub. When Houston has brought down Caleb Bullock, who, again, I think he may have the best case of being a snub, all-pro snub this season. The Steelers' offense has 2,300 YAC yards on the season, which ranks them second, while the Texans' defense has only allowed right under 1,600 YAC yards on the season, which ranks them the seventh best. You can't just quick game this defense. That's going to spell a world of trouble for Aaron Rodgers, because eventually you're going to find yourself in a 3rd and 6, and that quick game ain't going to work. And that's where you're going to see the Houston Texans edges get after the quarterback, or those guys in the middle, or Tommy T have a great game. That's where it's going to get tricky for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I don't know how often they want to live in those situations. Now, I do want to get into some personnel matchups. I found this online, so thanks to my boy Jacob Texans. Texans use their jumbo package 18.2% of their snaps this year, second highest, while only averaging 3.2 yards per carry, almost plays, fourth fewest among teams with 20 or more carries out of the jumbo. However, Houston does average 10.2 yards per attempt out of the jumbo personnel package, which is second most among teams with 10 or more attempts. So that said, this is what I'd like to see. The Steelers have had issues all season long covering tight ends, and I think this is an extension of the issues in coverage from a middle of the field standpoint, specifically from Patrick Queen. I think he allowed nearly 900 receiving yards this year. That's god-awful. Yes, let's make sure Dalton Schultz and Patrick Queen is, matched up. Let's make sure we see Dalton Schultz featured when those mismatches present themselves. But also, and this is just me, a little bit of motion and marks out of the backfield to get maybe some of those one-on-one looks with Patrick Queen, or to keep a safety down in the box. You'll be looking at maybe a situation where Marks can freeze the defender underneath and give Stroud that high-low concept to choose from, or just an opportunity to get some good cheap yards underneath with some room to run. And as much as Houston loves the 11 personnel, I think mixing in some 12 personnel to potentially force the Steelers to deploy an additional backer in coverage on the field might play in Houston's favor. But there are some things that I think Nick Caley is going to have. This will be one of those games where many of you feel like if the offense doesn't produce, and if it's from the lack of play calling, then Houston should call around or fire Nick Caley. I don't think that'll be the case. What I will say is Nick Caley has gradually gotten better over the course of the few weeks. And a lot of y'all still hold him to the fire for the first 3 weeks of the season. Rightfully so, but not rightfully so, because he's gotten better. Right? And so let's make sure we pump the brakes on wanting to fire everybody anytime it's not up to the appeal of the fans. That's not fair. Players still have to be productive. Like, this ain't matter where you can control everything from the controller. The players actually have to make the plays, and I think Nick Caley has been better. I think this will be a great moment for Nick Caley to shut everybody the hell up. I'm not going nowhere. Like, if Nick Caley goes out there, and again, it ain't from 25 to 25. That's on the players. When they get into that red zone, that is where all night I'm looking at what did Nick Caley do. Now, I also want to give my final prediction for today's game. It's going to be fun, guys. It's going to be a great game, I think. I think it's going to be a tough game. a hard-fought game. I think it's going to be physical, but I think Houston has all of the tools to pull out a victory. So stick around for more Locked On Texans. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside of the app. Can't beat that. You open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boost let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defenses, quarterback play, or coaching. Your picks or whatever you choose to roll with, it's all up to you. Then you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs keep rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL game day. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Closing out today's show, I'm going to give my final predictions. I do want to let you guys know that right after the game, make sure you check out the Locked On Texans squad show. Myself, Stan, MC, and also Wade Smith, former Houston Texans offensive lineman, who has done a very good job of breaking down some of the things from the football standpoint all season when he joins the show, and I love it. For Houston, though, for this game tonight, I'll talk about fulfilling a prophecy and what does that mean. Guys, the Houston Texans have an amazing opportunity in front of them. It reminds me a little bit about, and I kind of hate to say this because in some ways the result could be the same, but it reminds me a little bit of what the Giants did in Eli's first Super Bowl run. Going on the road, having to win in tough environments, the whole nine, right? How they were winning those games. That was the first time we were seeing that NASCAR package. Remember that? Right? That D-line was making it hell for everybody. Strahan and OC and Tuck. And, like, that was a different beast. And so they have a lot of similarities, in my opinion, that I think that Giants team and this Texan team share. The win streak to even make it to the playoffs. And I think this will be an amazing moment for the city of Houston. But it all starts tonight. Anything that we predict, anything that the Texans winning, like when we predict Houston winning the Super Bowl, it starts tonight. If they don't win tonight, obviously there's no Super Bowl run. Why do I feel confident that Houston can win tonight? I've said it once, I've said it again. Listen, people want to bring up the cold weather. What have they done this season? They played in the cold weather. KC. People want to bring up physicality. What have they done this season? They played against physical teams, and they've been able to out-physical teams. Anything people want to bring up as to reasons why Houston will lose, there's only one thing that people can say that why Houston can lose, and that is lack of execution. That ain't just my words. That's also the words of your quarterback, your offensive coordinator, your head coach, your coaches, your players. When Houston doesn't execute, they either make it hard on themselves to win games or they lose these games. You look at the games that they lost, the lack of execution in the first 3 games. You look at the games that they made it hard on, some of these moments where the penalties are calling back big plays. Moments like that matter. Houston cannot suffer from too many moments like that tonight. But specifically looking at this game, ladies and gentlemen, Texas fans across the world, H-Town. Blame J.J. Watt for this. Because that video from J.J. Watt got me all kind of hype. I didn't watch it 15 times. Blame J.J. Watt for this. I'm picking the Houston Texans. And I'm picking the Houston Texans 24-13. In this game, I'm picking a team that is still extremely hungry. I'm picking a team that is playing like they are still 0-3. I'm picking the team that is playing like they allow Baker Mayfield to beat them on 4th and 10. I'm picking the team that still holds themselves accountable for losing to Denver. I'm picking the team that is playing faster and more physical than majority of these teams in the NFL playoffs right now. I'm picking the team that is led by DeMeco Ryans. I am picking a team that still has a chip on their shoulder and back is against the wall. I'm picking the team that understands the youth around them is no excuse. Let's look at some of the young players for Houston in the role that they played this year. Just recently, a 75-yard TD to open up the game from Jaden Higgins, rookie, 6th of his season, by the way. Ariante Ursary, before the injury and after the injury, coming into the league, getting baptized early on, dating back to July in practice. Those first rough 3 weeks. Then he got it together. Then he ain't allowing no sacks, and those pressures are getting cut down. Jalen Nolan, the special team. Woody Marks in the role that he's had to play, in the lack thereof in many ways. Jalen Reed is also back, the safety. So I'm picking a team that in the midst of their ups and downs and their bumps and bruises, their first-time offensive play caller had to grow up. The rookies all around him had to grow up. And in many ways, the franchise quarterback had to grow up. And in many ways, the head coach had to take a step up. I'm picking the Houston Texans tonight, 24-13, and I think this will be one of those moments where we view this game afterwards as a shock. Wow, where was a lot of this at the end of throughout the year? Now, things could go bad. This could very well be a Caley Fairbrand game, and Houston gets 1 TD and 4 field goals. But I just don't see a world where the Pittsburgh Steelers win tonight. Thank you for watching today's episode. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12 and also on Instagram at Some Sports Guy. Let's have a great night, Texan fans. Go Texans. Drop your H's in the comments, and I'll see y'all tonight after the game for the post-game squad show.